Guilty of embezzlement, the French far-right leader Marine Le Pen has been officially barred by a French court from running for public office.
The other headlines today. Fear over social media use grows with evidence that most 8 to 12-year-olds have no rules around the use of devices in bedrooms.
These apps and games and sites are just, by and large, not safe by design for children, and that needs to change.
Following recent elections, we speak to TU Dublin's outgoing Student Union President on the big issues ahead at the troubled university.
I mean, the cost of living is also a key factor here as well, and the housing crisis, and altogether it creates this vacuum for students.
And in a Dublin museum, a group of retired printers are trying to bring their craft into the digital age.
The skill and the knowledge and the experience that we've got will be hopefully passed on so that the legacy will carry on into the future.
For many parents, it's their worst nightmare, losing their children to a social media world that's beyond their control. The recent success of the Netflix drama Adolescence shows just how potent an issue this is. Now, experts here are warning that smartphones are not safe by design, with worrying new evidence that 82% of 8 to 12-year-olds have no rules around the use of devices in their bedrooms. Here's our report from Patrick Domenico.
They've changed the way we learn, communicate and grow. But when it comes to children, smartphones are more than just tools. They are gateways to both opportunity and risk. In classrooms, on social media and at home, young people are learning to navigate a digital world that wasn't built for them. So how do we help them find their way? In schools like this one, there is a different rule. No phones during the day. At all.
Because of the problem with social media, it is because of the freedom that people seem to have of being able to say and post what they want on social media. That's where I find a huge difficulty. And from that point of view, phones have a potential use as an education tool. But from our perspective, the consequence of overuse and the side effects of using them as an education tool far outweigh the benefits that they present as an education tool within a classroom. One of the things we try to promote here, and all new kids that come in to the school here, I talk to them about the developing life skills, developing communication skills, developing a consciousness about inclusion. And that's hugely important in our school.
Smartphones can support education, but they also bring challenges, especially when it comes to social media.
There are lots of positive things that are available online, but unfortunately, at the end of the day, the online world wasn't designed with children in mind. It was designed by adults for adults. In addition to that, when we're looking at rules, we will ask, one of the things that we ask is whether there's any rules around the use of devices in bedrooms. And 82% of children in the 8 to 12-year-old category told us that they had no rules. We'd be very concerned about overnight use, which is so hidden. Parents aren't going to know who they're talking to, what they're looking at. We think children are less likely to come forward if they have seen something that upset them because they probably shouldn't have been on it in the first place. So the likes of Google, the likes of Meta, TikTok, Snapchat, Roblox, I think they are not doing enough to protect children. I go back to that point around safe by design. These apps and games and sites are just, by and large, not safe by design for children, and that needs to change.
In a world where online platforms are engineered for engagement, not safety, the question becomes, who protects the child?
We monitor it really closely, like he has the PlayStation, so I have it hooked up to my phone. I also have a family link with his phone. I can monitor what he's downloaded, and then, that was one of the conditions of him having a phone, that I was able to anytime look at it, check it, go through it, and then I was to have this link so I could keep an eye on things. I can control him much time he's on it and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was really important that we had them linked up, so I was fully in control, well, as much as I could be in control of what he was doing. Finding the balance with it all is quite hard in their little heads, trying to make sure they don't get totally addicted to it, which is really easily done. Like even for myself, I have to remind myself, put down the phone, it's kind of like becomes a part of you, so it's just trying to find the balance with it all.
There is no one-size-fits-all answer. Smartphones aren't going away, but how we guide the children in using them can make all the difference. It takes schools with clear policies, experts who understand the risks, and parents who stay present even in a digital world, because in the end, it's not just about limiting screen time. It's about raising aware, resilient, and thoughtful young people, online and offline.
In a case that has shocked Europe, the French National Rally leader Marine Le Pen has been found guilty of embezzling EU funds to pay for her party staff from 2004 to 2016. The consequences for her and her party were immediate and devastating. The court barred Le Pen from running for public office for 5 years, effectively blocking her path to the French presidency in 2027. We're joined now by our Europe correspondent, Nikki Giorgio. So, Nikki, what can you tell us about the story today?
Indeed, the hammer came down today in Paris. Le Pen is found guilty of embezzling 4.8 million euro. At first, she denied the accusations, but the court ruled against her today. Additionally, her lawyers have confirmed that she will appeal. However, this will still bar her from running in 2027. The 5-year ban has been decided by the courts today, which means that she will also be fined 100,000 euros and potentially 4 years in prison.
And what does this mean for her future presidential ambitions?
This is a good question, because her party has been in a sort of reshape for the last few years, especially going away from her anti-Semitic roots established by her father at first. She's been trying to reshape the party a lot and trying to get to new light. However, this might come into a problem now with her name not being in the ticket, because the Le Pen name and the party are deeply linked. And not having that name there might cause a lot of backlash. And her successor, Jordan Bardella, he might not have the recognition or the experience to run with the same conviction as her. So her party is up in the air right now.
And what does this mean for the French and broadly European political landscape?
Yeah, so far-right politicians are scrambling right now to criticize this attack on democracy. They're saying that it was undemocratic, denying a leader to run for president. However, I debate that somebody who is convicted of a felony is not fit to run to be a president. But as we can see in America, this trend has been established that even though there is a convicted felon in power, they could still run, they were still able to grasp that power. And we can see that American trends have now shifted over to Europe as well. So the question becomes, will she be able to run or not?
And Nikki, does it raise questions for the role of the judiciary in determining democracy as such?
The question really becomes of a legal one, I think, and if the judiciary system or if her appeal even comes back differently. However, that is still unclear, since appeals take a very long time in France. So she will definitely not be running. But the question is, what will happen after the election 2027? Because Macron's government is also very fragile at the moment. And this could mobilize and radicalize maybe the far right even further, victimizing Le Pen and calling to action, maybe calling him to streets. So we will see how the government, which is already very fragile, will handle this backlash now.
And very briefly, Nikki, what's the feeling on the ground?
Yeah, I think the tensions are high, especially this rippled through. Le Pen called herself politically dead after this, and she walked out of the courtroom shaking her head and said, unbelievable. So this will definitely have some effects on the party.
Huge thanks, Nikki.
It's been a tumultuous time for the Technological University of Dublin. With governance issues, a financial deficit and student numbers down, the university is under scrutiny like never before. Earlier, we spoke to the outgoing Students' Union President Shauna O'Toole, and I began by asking her what she thinks the biggest challenges are for the university.
I mean, an 8.5 million deficit that we think is probably a lot bigger than 8.5 million would probably be the key one. And then I suppose being in a lot of trouble with the HEA, I suppose, and then the fact that we can't keep ourselves out of the newspapers is not great for retention, I suppose, if you're a prospective student and your parents are reading the newspaper and saying that you're prospective colleges constantly in the newspaper for all the wrong reasons. It's probably not the best and probably a huge challenge for TU Dublin and for their UET.
Yeah, and as you mentioned there, student retention is an issue. The most recent report said it was close to 24% of a dropout rate in TU Dublin. Do you think that the university is doing enough to solve this issue?
They're doing some things, they could do more. I suppose our key competitor is DCU. If you go to DCU and compare it to TU Dublin, it's like night and day. The academics in TU Dublin have always been stellar. We're good at what we do. We provide, as they say, go beyond learning, practical real world learning. But as far as a student life, which is one of the key things that makes being a student great, is incredibly lacking. I suppose us in the Office for Student Life and Society and Sports do our best, but if you come onto especially Grange Gormley campus, which is the key satellite campus that they throw out on every advertisement, there's no student centre, there's no student hub, students are sitting on floors eating their lunch. That doesn't really inspire you to hang around, form a community. In Tallaght, our offices, the common room and our offices, and it's a prefab. There's not a lot of space in Blanchardstown either, and Blanchardstown would probably be the best for space. Bolton Street is falling apart. Angel Street is on its way to do the exact same. So there's no, I mean, the cost of living is also a key factor here as well, and the housing crisis. And altogether, it creates this vacuum for students that they believe that just get your degree and get out, get a job, start your life. If that means staying in Ireland or moving to Australia or anywhere else, that's the way students think nowadays. We get a great surge of engagement, maybe September to November, and then it drops off. It dies. And I know that's across the board. In all student unions, remember USI, we talk to other student unions, and we liaise all the time about how do we get engagement up. And the answer is we just don't know. If the cost of living continues this way, you have James Lawless announcing that they might not give the €1,000 cut when it comes to the budget on student fees. These are things that students will constantly worry about, and the last thing then they're thinking about is a night out because they can't barely afford to do their studies.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned there, the cost of living, another big part of that is housing, and housing was something you were very passionate about in your original manifesto for Student Union President. Do you think during your time as President there has been much progress made?
The biggest, I suppose, hurdle that we face as a technological university is there's no TU borrowing framework. There's no mechanism, and doesn't seem to be any indication that there will be one soon for us as a university to borrow. Now, I know when you say that against a deficit, you're like, well, why would we be able to borrow? Every university in Ireland is in a deficit. Like, there's a 36.5 plus more million shortfall in funding higher education. Every university is facing a deficit, and yeah, every other university, a legacy university as we call them, can borrow to build capital projects. One of the key things we need to be able to build is accommodation. We have no accommodation on campus on any of our 3 main sites. And not from lack of me lobbying at every opportunity, when it was Simon Harris, when it was Patrick O'Donovan, when it was James Lawless, no one in the higher education, in the Department of Higher Education, seems to have an appetite for doing the TU borrowing framework. When I went to USI Lobby Day about 3-4 weeks ago, there were so many TDs that started me didn't know what a TU borrowing framework was. We're unaware that we couldn't borrow. We assumed we could borrow, and that's how we were in a deficit. These are all things that really inhibit us being able to provide just reasonable accommodation to our students. Students don't need this luxury bowling alleys. They need somewhere that's clean and fresh, and they can put their head down and go to class.
Okay, and very quickly, final question. You're about to step down as Student Union President. What do you think is the biggest problem that your successor will face?
One key one is our funding. So you're talking about retention. Our funding goes down if they can't retain students. Okay. If we have no funding, we can't provide a student union. That worries me greatly, that there will be no one there to advocate for students. I know some students probably walk around here complaining we do nothing. We actually do an awful lot behind the scenes, making sure they have rights. Like the student charter, I worked on all last year with our staff to make sure there's rights for students. If we can't keep the funding going, can't keep us afloat, that really concerns me. And this is a concern across the board. And then the other key concern I have is if the minister is throwing curveballs like this, what's next? Yeah. What's next for us? Because the nature of our students being, a lot of them, socially, economically disadvantaged, the more curveballs the minister throws, that will affect our students more so than a UCD or a Trinity student. Okay. So they're the key things I'll be watching when I do my crossover with my successor.
Okay. Sean O'Toole, outgoing TU Dublin SU President, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And finally, in an age of news apps and digital books, mechanical printing seems to have become a thing of the past. Meticulous composing has been replaced by algorithms, and letters are made of pixels instead of metal. In the historic Beggar's Bush barracks in Dublin, however, there's a community of people trying to preserve the art of printing and bring it into the future. This report comes from our arts correspondent, Sarah Booth.
Since the 1550s, when the first letterpress came to Ireland, the country has had a rich history of mechanical printing. Nowadays, the tradition is being upheld by a select few.
I'm a volunteer in the National Print Museum. I come down every Thursday morning, do a little bit of work and have coffee and a chat with some of the friends among the volunteers. There's a bit of sadness that the old craft is gone, but you can't stop progress either. You know, it has to go, and we can do an awful lot more with computers, and we can do them faster.
At the National Print Museum in Dublin, passionate tour guides and retired professionals still believe that letterpress printing is a tradition worth keeping alive.
People are so used to tablets and phones that they think that it's just there, whereas we remind people that when we produce something on a printed sheet of paper, it had to be very labour intensive, and to maintain this is to demonstrate the skill that was needed from both the engineers and the operators to produce the finished article.
Every month, former compositors and printers, like Michael and Brian, meet up to engage with their community and share their knowledge on the different machines.
I'm a retired letterpress printer, and I'm just going to show you this machine, which is a Heidelberg Platten, made in Germany. They're very, very reliable machines.
The museum also has several hot metal composing machines on display. The linotype, for example, allowed you to set an entire line of type at once, which streamlined the printing of newspapers in the 19th century.
When they invented this, people thought they were going to lose their jobs. The exact opposite occurred, because you were able to produce more pages faster and everything like that.
With the monotype, you could only cast one letter at a time.
We're trying to keep this machine in running order, as there isn't another one in existence of this particular type. So the skill and the knowledge and the experience that we've got will be hopefully passed on into a new skills transfer program, so that the legacy will carry on into the future.
One of the people still learning the printing trade today is tour guide and training compositor/printer Liam.
The book has, and the newspaper has been such a central part of how people engaged with the world, really. You know, the spread of information is so important to how a society functions, and I just think print has served the world so well. Why should we forget it?
With initiatives like the Skillshare program, different workshops, for example, for printing Legos, as well as a collaboration with the Cultural and Heritage Studies program, the National Print Museum hopes to bring these old techniques to a new generation.
And that's all from the City Live for today.
From all the team here, thanks for watching. Goodbye.